Yes, if you're preparing.
Yay!
And we're live. Yay! It worked. Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Branch of Laurels. I'm a Shaxi. I am a Laurel from the Kingdom of Vontier, and I just got distracted by our closed captioning, which always messes up my name really badly. And I interview Laurels from around the known world. And tonight, my guest is Maysun. And your name is your modern name. I should change that.
Oh, I should have changed it.
Okay. Yep. I should have caught that before we went live. I was a little distracted. Anyway, Maysun was recognized and elevated during the pandemic, and
Yes.
had a virtual elevation, which is a choice that I don't know, might have been really hard to make. I guess you'll talk about that.
Yeah, that is definitely, there's a lot of thought about that one.
Yeah, for sure. But first, let's start out with your SCA origin story. How did you find the SCA and what made you fall in love?
So I actually have a really sort of weird SCA origin story because in anybody who's been to Loch Solon knows the family of the dispensers, and they are all teachers and they all do an amazing work in the real world. And when I was in junior high, my history teacher was actually one of the dispensers. She was Claire Spencer in the real world. And she was actually the founding baroness of the barony of Loch Solon. And she told us about the SCA, and we did a yearly Renaissance fair, whereas, little 8th grade students, we would perform little bits of Shakespeare, and we made like the little super basic tea tunics, and we had this whole medieval festival, and she had people from the SCA come in and talk about medieval times and the Renaissance. And so that was my first introduction to the SCA. And she always said, if anybody wants to go, I'll tell you all about it. And at the time, I was in 8th grade, so I was like, cool 12-year-old, I'm not going to go hang out with the teacher. But then I've been sewing since I was 7. My grandma taught me to sew. And when I was in high school, I started randomly sewing like the little Simplicity Renaissance dresses just for fun, because I wanted a challenge. And so I had like all these clothes, and my mom was like, what are you going to do? Wear them to the grocery store? And I was like, yes.
I'll do what I want.
I'll do what I want. So I had all these clothes and remembered the SCA. And so I started playing in the SCA because I already had these clothes that I needed someplace to wear. And that was when I was 21, and I never looked back. I went to my first fighter practice, and that was it. So I went to my first one, and then the next week I came back to fighter practice, and Her Grace Tiana, who was the Baroness at the time, as soon as she saw me that second fighter practice, she said, "Sucker!"
And you knew you were with your people.
I was home.
Awesome. So was Tiana one of your early mentors in the SCA?
She definitely was. She was Baroness, and just her excitement and her ability to draw people in. And this was before she was a Pelican and before she was a Duchess. But as soon as she became a Pelican, I've always called her the Tom Sawyer Pelican, because it doesn't matter what she's doing. She makes it look like so much fun, and she pulls everybody in to serve with her. And just the way that she makes that, she's so passionate about it, and she's so good at getting other people passionate about it. I've always really admired that about her. And she definitely sort of laid that foundation of how important service is in the SCA for me, because I saw that just from the very beginning.
Awesome. That service and that, oh yeah, I'm going to blank out on the word. Never mind. The fostering and perpetuation of the SCA, and it's still not the word I wanted, but whatever.
That's okay. I know what you mean. I don't have the word either, but.
So what sent you down the arts path? You were already sewing, and you already had some impressive costumes when you came in, which is a big step ahead.
That definitely. I've always been an artisan. Before the SCA, I was always doing various art projects, whether it was sewing or embroidering or painting or building. Arts was always what I did. And I come from a very artistic family. Everybody in my family is an artist or a musician. And so I grew up playing instruments and always having these, access to all various different arts and trying new things. My mom is a semi-professional flautist, and her older sister is an artist who has had several books of art and directions in art and that sort of thing published. So I just that's what I grew up knowing. My grandmother, my mom's mom, was getting her degree in arts and fine arts when she passed away, actually. But so that was just something I was always surrounded by from the very beginning of my life.
Awesome. And how did you fit in with the arts community in the SCA? What was your kind of in there?
So I originally started playing, and I was immediately introduced to and sort of absorbed into a very service-oriented household. It was Barony Ashton, which is their excellencies Ulrich and Rachel are the heads of that household. And so a lot of sort of my early introduction was very much to service, but also service as art. Ulrich is both a pelican and a laurel. And very early in my SCA life, I met Niccolo, who is also now a pelican and a laurel. And I also met Jadi, who lived in Artemisia at the time. So a lot of these people just very much this idea of art and service wrapped up and completely inextricably. So I was just able to kind of meet a lot of artisans very early on that I still, to this day, very much respect their artistry and the way that they do art in the SCA.
That's really cool that you came in seeing the two kind of as one thing. When I came in, I was told a lot, you need to pick one or the other. You've got to put your energy into this path or this path. You can't walk them at the same time or you're never going to get anywhere. And I was like, what?
Yeah, very early. I was sitting down having lunch with Jadi, and she told me, you cannot have art without service, and you cannot have service without art. They have to be together.
I love that. I totally love that. So what was your service geek? What did you really get into?
So I started in the SCA, and within my first year, I had become chatelaine for my barony and a lady in waiting to the baroness. So very much that kind of recruiting personal service was always very much what I got into, and still now I love meeting people who are new to the SCA and helping them learn about the SCA and find a home within the SCA, because I think so often, those of us who have been around for a long time, it's easy to kind of overlook those people who are brand new to the SCA and how overwhelming that can be if you don't come in and immediately meet somebody who can be like, let me show you how to find a place. And so that still now is very, really important to me. That sort of very personal service to newcomers and also to people who have been around for a long time. One of my favorite pieces of advice that I got very early in the SCA was that, as when I became a lady in waiting, that those who sit on the thrones, they give up their dream in order to give the dream to everybody else in their group. And it's the responsibility of their retainers to help give that dream back to them, even though they're serving their community. And so kind of giving that in both ways, like to new people, but also to those people who've been around for a long time and are giving everything that they have to help them still remember that it's like their dream, is really important to me.
That's I love how you put that. I have done a lot of personal service as well, and it's a hard job to have that crown on your head, whether it's a baronial coronet or principality or kingdom, and the people that you have around you make all the difference, for sure. it's very satisfying to know that you're making their job a little easier, or making them clothes that make them feel a little more official and regal and beautiful.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, so what was your arts path like? You started when you were 21,
hmm
and you just were Laurel this year. So how much time did you spend kind of pursuing that path?
So my elevation was actually on my 40th birthday. So that was 19 years in the SCA. And it's, I took a little bit of a break in the middle, and I had 2 kids, which slows you down. But I think because I was 21 when I started, and so I look back and I was really such a child, just because I was 21, and you don't think of yourself as a child when you're 21, but I look back and I'm like, I was a baby. I knew nothing. And so I feel like I really grew up so much in the SCA and learning about who I am and how to express that through my art, and also to share that with other people in a way that was really like helpful and healthy for me and for them. So it's, I have been doing art for a really, really, really long time. And so, just looking back and seeing as I improved, and seeing just sort of that path that is, it's very kind of wiggly because I did so many different things. And I am very much like, I am sort of that look a squirrel kind of an artisan where, I see something that looks fun. And so I'm going to go try that. And then I'm going to go try that. And then I'm going to try the other thing. And so I think, I don't know, that path was very sort of like wiggly just because I wanted to try everything.
Yeah. Did you have like a lot of people really like doing competitions, or for me, it was costuming for royalty. There's always everybody finds their own path to kind of be seen. What was your way of being seen, getting your art seen across your kingdom?
So one of my favorite things that we used to do every year in our kingdom was Laurel's Prize tourneys, and it was every year at this specific event, and it was huge. That there would just be so many artisans displaying their arts, and getting feedback from the laurels of the kingdom, and then also from the rest of the populace. And I think that I always felt like I learned so much. I felt like I learned more there than I did the whole rest of the year learning on my own. And so for me, really that, and sewing for other people. Like I love to sew for other people, whether it's for my kids or my friends or royalty, really kind of making clothes for other people. I've done quite a few vigil outfits for other peers as they were being elevated. So doing that has been really fun for me to be able to see that go to them in such an important time for them.
Yeah, it's like making their wedding clothes.
Yes,
cool. Yeah,
it is
awesome. Did you end up apprenticing to anybody? And at what point in your journey did that happen?
I did. I was actually an apprentice twice. So I was apprenticed to Mr. Shadi, and that happened very early in my SCA career. I became her student at 1 year in the SCA, and then I became her apprentice at 2 years. And this was way back in the early aughts, before social media was really a thing, and she moved across the country, which was really hard. And we really tried to keep that apprentice Laurel relationship going, but just with the distance, it didn't.
Hard.
It was really hard, especially then when there wasn't all of the resources now to have, easy communication with somebody that far away in that way. Yeah. And so we mutually just decided that wasn't working for us, that I wasn't getting what I needed, and she didn't feel like she was offering what she wanted to be offering. And so we dissolved that relationship on very good terms. And then I waited a couple of years because at that point, I wanted to spend a lot of time really thinking about what I wanted to get out of being an apprentice. Not just being an apprentice to be an apprentice, but what was the goal for me and why I wanted that. And then my bestie lady, Thea, was elevated to the Order of the Laurel. And we talked about it a little bit, and I thought about that really, really hard for a really long time because she was my best friend. She is my best friend, and I didn't want for that to change our friendship, or for that to be anything other than we were already really good friends, and we already talked about being artisans and being on that path and what that meant and what how we both viewed that. And so in a lot of ways, she was already acting as my Laurel, just because we have that kind of relationship where we talk about everything. And then I finally decided that, yes, I wanted to be her apprentice. And so I became her apprentice, and she is absolutely amazing. And she's probably listening and being like, yep. But yeah, I became her apprentice, and that was absolutely amazing because, she and I, sorry.
It's okay.
My daughter she used her allowance to order new headphones, and so she has been very excitedly waiting for them to arrive, and they just got here.
Oh, yay!
Thea and I, we talk a lot about the SCA and about our place in it and about our SCA philosophies, and so we were very much coming to that from a very similar perspective. And so having my best friend be my Laurel was really helpful to me, because I think everybody wants different things in an apprentice Laurel relationship. And what I wanted was, I have a lot of anxiety, and I have a lot of imposter syndrome, and I have a lot of perfectionism, where I will look at my pieces and I will find the one thing wrong with it and be like, this is the worst piece ever. Nobody should ever see this. It's horrible. And I needed someone that I trusted and that I loved, and that would absolutely be like, either we'll talk about this tomorrow, or knock it off, this is great. And I would believe them. And for me, that was Thea, and that's what I needed in that relationship. So it worked really, really well, because she was able to do those things for me.
Perfect. That's awesome. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little spacey. I got a cortisone shot in my shoulder today, and it's distracting me.
Hopefully good in the long run, though.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm going to be able to do stuff again, which will be yay. So I'm looking at what you're wearing, and it looks like you do sort of a late period. Tell me about your style, your persona, and what you're into, and why you came to that.
So technically, my persona is a 16th century Persian noblewoman who travels between Venice and Isfahan. And so I do a little bit of both of those, generally just because it's really pretty. And that's how I ended up there. I went through sort of several ideas and iterations, and I've tried a bunch of different things. And those were sort of the two cultures that I really settled on. And I found a way historically that was relatively reasonable that the same person could travel between those two places. I also do a lot of other things. I do 13th century Rus, which I sort of came upon through Thea, who came upon it through Sir Casimir. And so now sort of as a household, we all do a little bit of that because it's fun and beautiful. And it's, just kind of being that person who wants to try everything. It's really hard for me to just choose one.
Right.
So, but having three, I feel okay about that.
And do you have, so I have never asked you what you got your laurel for, so I'm just kind of poking around. Do you do Bardic too, since Thea is a Bardic laurel?
I do. So I do In Artemisia, we don't like really specifically generally have you got your laurel in this. But sort of my main arts are sewing and embroidery and bardic arts. And so I do a lot of bardic arts. I write a lot of my own pieces that I perform, which I've always I think growing up in a musical household, I've been performing, whether it was acting or playing instruments, again, since I was like 7. And so it was just very kind of a very natural art for me to sort of segue into, just because it's something that I love to do so much.
So are you singing your pieces, or are they poems, or tell me about that?
I do spoken word poetry, which I mean in modern times it would be called spoken word poetry. A lot of it is very inspired by the cadences of some of the translations of Sufi poetry, which there's a whole lot of discussion to have about the translations of Sufi poetry, because a lot of the really well-known people who are doing those translations aren't exactly doing translations. They're more sort of taking a theme and writing their own original poetry, which is fantastic. But you get a lot of that, you've got a lot of really specific cadences that come along with that. And so I generally write in a very similar cadence to that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And is that kind of your grand passion?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's really, I love being able to make people feel things, and being, especially because a lot of times I write about experiences in the SCA, or sort of those grand thoughts about the SCA. And so being able to make people feel things and feel really positively about the SCA, or have memories. One of my favorite bardic memories personally was I performed in the Bard of Artemisia competition. It was at a crown tournament. And after I performed my piece, I had several people, and I wrote a piece about fighting in crown tournament and being in crown tournament and the finals and all of that. And after I finished performing, several people who had been kings and queens in the past came and told me that it brought back everything they had felt on that day when they won crown tournament. And that was one of the best, those were the best compliments I've ever gotten, that I could really bring those feelings out for people, to have those memories and that really strong reaction to the work that I performed.
That's awesome. I asked because your face lit up when you started talking about it. And I was like, oh, I think this is her thing.
I did. That's my thing. And I recently started trying court heraldry, which is so much fun. So much fun.
Very cool. Very cool. So you wrote about fighting in crown. Do you fight yourself, or are you fought for as a consort?
No, I don't fight. It's something I've always been kind of interested to try, and just life, and it's never been something that I've tried yet. But I've never had somebody fight for me in crown. So no.
So it's just from observations that you were able to express what other people were feeling from that
experience. Yeah, it was just watching it and watching those. I love to people watch in general, but just watching the emotions that people go through when they are fighting or when they're being fought for, and seeing how poignant that is for them.
It's kind of magical. Yeah. I hope that at some point you are able to have someone fight for you, or fight for somebody if that's what you're into, because it is it's an experience that I hope everyone can have. Yeah, I think it's really cool.
I feel like that's such I mean, we do so much in the SCA, and we're not a strictly fighting society, but I feel like that's something that is such a unique experience that people get to have within the SCA. I would love to have that experience one day.
All right, people, step forward. Yeah, and I think that it can feel exclusive to people that haven't had that experience, and I think that we've taken some good steps towards being more inclusive with inspirational equality and, people being able to fight for same gendered people if, that's who inspires them. I'm really happy that that's happening, but I think that we still have a ways to go.
I think equity is always a journey, and we never finish it. And it's one of those things that anybody who's friends with me on Facebook knows that I talk pretty extensively about equity and making sure that everybody is seen and has that voice. And I think it can feel really overwhelming, especially when you're new to doing that work and you realize how pervasive it is and how much you even have participated in it. I look back on some of the things that I've done and said in the past and am horrified because I've said some really terrible things that I didn't know were terrible when I said them. And I think it's a path and we're never done. And so it's really important sort of to offer yourself that grace of being willing to see what's happened in the past and know better and do better in the future. Because none of us are ever perfect.
Nope. For sure. And you do better when you know better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you feel as a person of color in the SCA? How do you feel that your path has maybe been a little bit different than somebody who doesn't carry that?
I think it's really interesting sometimes to be a person of color within a predominantly white society, because the SCA is predominantly, and that's not even necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. It's neither here nor there. It's just the way it is.
Just the facts.
It's just a fact of the SCA. And I'm mixed race. I have a white parent and a black parent. And so even within that sort of society, there are a lot of benefits that I get because I'm lighter skinned. I'm a lighter skinned black person, because there are places where being darker skinned or having much darker skin really can be to somebody's detriment, because they're viewed as more threatening or more aggressive, even if they're saying or doing the same things as anybody else. And that's certainly something that I experience, but I know that I don't experience it to the extent that other people who are darker do experience. But I do think, within the SCA, I am very outspoken. And I have not always been outspoken in a way that was positive. And, there was definitely a time where I kind of went through, I was sort of that stereotypical angry black girl. And I'm still an angry black girl. I will always be an angry black girl because there will always be something to be angry about. But there was definitely a time where I expressed it much more aggressively than I do now. And I think that is not necessarily, that's not at all limited to people of color. I certainly know I have a lot of white friends who also went through very angry phases. But I think sometimes being a Black woman, I get stereotyped as angry and aggressive. And when I say something, it can be seen as far more aggressive than if a white person says that. I've definitely had experiences in discussions on social media where I would say something and then some people would come back and say, that's too angry, that's aggressive, you can't talk to people like that. And then I would have friends who are white literally copy and paste what I had said. And those same people would be like, oh, that's so wise. I'm so glad that, you're speaking out. And it's really frustrating to be on the other side of that and to see that literally the only difference is the color of my skin. And people are immediately turning that into a much bigger thing. And it's really frustrating. And I think a lot of times we do that without even thinking about it. People don't even realize that they're doing it. And I think the conversations about racism and how systemic it is, and those are the conversations that we're starting to have where, 20 years ago, there was very much the idea that racism is only going out in a white pointy hat and burning crosses, and that's racism. And if you're not doing that, then you're not racist. And so now there are a lot of really hard conversations going on of that, the unintentional, innocent racism of, I didn't mean to, I'm not racist, I don't hate people of color, I don't hate anybody, but sometimes our behavior is reinforcing some of those underlying power structures.
Yeah, it's so systemic in our modern society that the microaggressions are everywhere. And from words that you've used every day for your whole life, that you suddenly find out, oh, that's really rooted in the history of slavery and oppression, and I really should never use that word again. And you're like, holy goddamn, I never knew that.
Yeah.
And there, from little things like that to being outwardly racist. Everybody's got a little racism going on in them, even if they adamantly are anti-racist and don't want to be. We all trip up because that's the way our society has been run for 400 years. And it's going to take a lot of work from a lot of people.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking about it
and
sharing your story. I really appreciate it. We have some pictures that you shared. Do you want to take a look at those?
Yeah.
Okay. See if I can share the screen today. Uh-oh. All right. So my screen share that I had set up is not there.
Uh-oh.
So I am going to ask you to tell me one of your favorite Estrella stories.
Ooh.
While I go and find the picture.
Story.
Yeah.
All right. So this one, many, many years ago, I was at a party with several other of my friends, and a couple of ladies and I, one of the ladies was going through kind of a hard time and wanted to talk to some of us, just, some aside. We kind of went over to the side and we sat down in, a little circle, a way that, sometimes you do with your friends. And we were having a conversation, and this young man who was 3 sheets to the wind came over, sat down, clearly was sort of doing the, I'm gonna come hit on the ladies over here. Hi, ladies. And this is one of those moments that very young Maysun had no idea how intimidating she could be. And so I just turned to him and I said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "No," and walked away. I'm sure he was a very nice young man, and I genuinely had no idea that he was going to react that way. But
you were kind and polite and also very clear.
Yes.
That's awesome. All right, so I think I figured out the pictures. Let's see. Oh, yay. Okay.
Yay. Oh, that was at my elevation.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
When were you offered, and what was that experience?
So I was offered at an event called Spookamisia, which we had in Artemisia. Artemisia has really, I am just incredibly in awe of the amount of work that their Majesties Damon and Veronique have done, and also Fia, who has helped. The three of them have kept our kingdom going, and we've had 2 events a month, almost every month since we've been in lockdown. And Spookamisia was an event that my household ran, and it was in October, and it was all spooky themed. And I performed in the during court in the evening, because our Bard of Artemisia has been having people perform throughout court. And I finished performing, and their Majesties thanked me for performing and started talking about my how much I have contributed with arts and sciences. And they called the Order of the Laurel forward. And so, I was sitting at my computer, and all the videos popped up on Zoom of all of the laurels in the kingdom and across the node world who had all come to be there on this day that I was offered. And Thea had also made sure that my mom and my my other best friend, were there. So their little videos popped up too, which was really, really cool that they were there as well. So that was a really cool experience, to be able to see that, and then to be able to go back and watch it again. It was really, really cool, because when they call you up, my mind was like, and I just started sobbing. But so to be able to go back and watch that again was really cool.
Had you and Thea kind of talked what ifs at the beginning of the pandemic about, would you be into virtual, or do you think, had you just kind of had theoretical discussions, or?
We had definitely had theoretical discussions, and their majesties had done a poll, like a public poll in the Kingdom Facebook group early in the pandemic, about would you be willing to accept an award, and had different levels of award. Would you be happy to accept this level or that level or the other level? And it was very much we don't know if this is going to come up, but we just want to hear what our populace is thinking about that. And we had definitely had some theoretical conversations about what if, would you want that? I was actually the third virtual laurel made in my kingdom. So I had, we definitely knew by the time we got to be, I definitely knew that was something that their majesties were doing, not necessarily that it would be me, but that they were doing it. So I had some examples to look to, which was really nice.
I know you've already said this, but I want to kind of add my own 2 cents. Your kingdom has rocked the pandemic, and I have attended more than one of your courts. and from doing that polling to find out what the populace wanted, to just sticking with it for over a year. Thank you, everybody, if you're watching, for all of the work that you've put in. It's not only been your kingdom, but it's been all of us that, you've given a little hope to. So thank you. So you decided to take a vigil.
Yes. We did a virtual vigil. So this is actually at a hotel in downtown Salt Lake that we found, and we found this gorgeous hotel that I got a suite in that had plenty of space to do a vigil, and so we did that virtually, and I had 2 people come in person to see me, which was also really, really nice. No hugs or anything, very across the room, but I was able to see a couple of people in person.
That's really cool. And you had kind of a support crew during your actual elevation as well.
Yes. So Thea was there in person, and Sean and Timur came to hold the sword for me while I swore my oath, which was really, really cool to have them there as well. And my husband was there, and my other best friend was there. So it was really nice to be able to have some of those people there for me in person. And it's, I've talked to a couple of people, and one of the really big advantages to having my vigil and my elevation virtually were so many people could come to it that otherwise wouldn't have been able to. Yeah. So I was able to talk to people from across the country who otherwise wouldn't have been able to be there and been able to talk to me during those times. So. And
you have a record of it.
Yes. Yeah. Which is really cool. That I haven't managed to feel like I could watch it without sobbing yet, but I can go back and watch my elevation when I'm ready to.
I think that's really wonderful. I'm one of those people that when I get called up in court, I go completely blank, and I'm kind of out of my body. Mm-hmm. And I don't really feel the feelings, and I don't know what is going on, and I don't hear what's being said. And I think I would have made the choice that you made in your position, because that would be sort of a gift to know what actually happened.
Yeah. I'm the same. I can barely remember it, but it just, like, knowing that I can go back and watch it is really comforting. So,
That's really, really cool.
yeah.
Do you have any regrets?
Um, I think the only thing that I feel like I really missed because I had it virtually is I've not been dubbed yet. And I believe that that is something that I can probably arrange with their majesties as we are going back in person. But honestly, that's like the one big thing that I sort of feel like I wish I had on that day.
That makes sense. That totally makes sense. Okay, so let's look at the next picture.
Oh, pre-court selfie. This is, all of my SVA selfies for the. I always take a selfie at events, like every event I have at least one selfie from. And so now virtually all of my selfies are these virtual selfies, and you can see my super messy office in the background, and that's my kid using his computer.
This is what the FCA is right now.
This is
20 clothes in a messy room.
Yeah, super messy room, but pretty clothes. Oh, and there's another SCA selfie, and there's my daughter who has comprised a fan of these multicolored dolls. And this, you could tell, is before my elevation because I've got my Bad Apprentice mug. Which, oh, that's so much fun. So this was a feast. This was at a Defenders tournament here in Lochsallen, and I did the feast for this event, and that was my feast crew. So these people worked so hard to help me put this feast out, and then at the end of the feast, I saw the most magical thing happen. Thea cleaned an entire kitchen through the power of bardic arts. If you're ever in a kitchen with Thea and I, there will be singing, inevitably, but we had gotten to the end of the feast, and if you've ever worked on a feast, you get to the end of the feast and you've got piles of dishes and your feet hurt and everybody's tired, and we were all sort of like dragging, and you get to this point where it's just like, okay, we've got to slog through the end of this, and Thea was like, and she put on Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. And this, if you've never seen Thea and I perform this song, this is sort of our household theme song. And so we ended up with this full rock concert that we were singing Queen and all of these like classic rock songs for the next hour, and everybody in the kitchen like perked up, and we were all singing and dancing and got the whole kitchen clean, and it felt like no time had passed. So that is the power and the magic of bardic arts.
That's awesome.
Hey, it's another bardic arts story. So this is Thea and me and my apprentice sister Anne. We were performing Dona Nobis at a solstice court here in Lochsallen, and which is a, if you're not familiar with the song, it's a canon, and so it's sung in a round. And so we each took a part and sang that, which was really, really fun.
Wow. That sounds like it's beautiful.
It was. Oh, this is my baby. So this is Ailey. She is my younger kid. She's now 5. I think she was 3 in this event. This is at a crown tournament. And she just, my entire SCA existence changed when I had kids. Because I had always, when we talked a little bit about it, I'd always been involved in service and all of that, but somehow my entire perspective on the SCA after I had kids changed. And just the way that I viewed, life in general, but specifically sort of service in the SCA and creating that environment in the SCA where people could thrive and find a home. When I had kids, it really redoubled that passion for me.
Stewardship.
So important. Stewardship. We got there eventually.
It took a really long time though. But yeah, creating an SCA. I noticed that in the picture of the kitchen folks that there are a lot of younger faces in that photograph. And that's really cool. That's not the case everywhere.
And I know there's been a lot of discussion, especially over the last week or two on social media about how to recruit younger people. And I think that's such an important thing. And not just that we go recruit younger people, but that, we make an environment where everybody feels welcome and where younger people feel like they can come in and have that home, and not just sort of be on the sidelines.
Yeah. My oldest is 17 and he is very much a video gamer. And I've been trying to get both of my children interested in, just pick a time period. Let me make you a costume. And reading the stuff that has been put out this last week, I'm like, oh, I'm going to make a video game outfit for him. Whatever he wants, I'm going to make it. And he can wear that to an SCA event.
Yeah.
And if anyone messes with him, they can talk to me about it.
Right?
Because I want it to be fun for him. And if it inspires somebody else who comes to visit and sees that to hang around, that's a bonus.
Yeah. It's we have all of those. We talk about the history of the SCA, and we have those, the Braveheart time and the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves time, and we have, and there's no reason that it can't be a video game that inspires that too.
Yeah, I full on came in Braveheart, horrible tablecloth Braveheart. That was my initiation into the SCA. So, yeah, I'm all about that. For the children.
For the children. I think the next picture is my son. No, maybe it's not. No, it's me. Yeah, that is another SCA. There's my son.
There we
go. So this was quite a few years ago. This was before my daughter was born. And I think he's 5 in this picture. And this picture was actually taken by my apprentice sister, Anne, who is absolutely amazing. But I had to include him because everything I said when we were looking at the picture of my daughter, my kids just changed everything. And that was, so now when I think about the SCA, my kids are very much sort of woven up in that and making that an experience for them as well.
And you have a SCA household, an environment that has been conducive to having kids at events, and you have support.
Yes.
And all of that.
Absolutely. So Fia and I actually, our kids are 6 days apart. My son was born on December 3rd, and then her Livy was born on December 9th. So
wow.
They're just 6 days apart. So we were pregnant together and we've raised those older kids together. And it actually was really interesting that year, the year that they were born, there were like 11 or 12 babies born in our sort of extended social network that same year. So we do have this like group of kids that have just sort of run through the SCA together, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We had a couple of other families have kids around the same time, but we never managed to pull together and support each other. And I've heard the other moms talk about it and wishing that they had more of a community. And I think all of us were so overwhelmed we couldn't get our shit together to like support each other. And so yeah, it was dysfunctional. And I'm really happy for you that you had something that was functional.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I think Artemisia in general is just a really kid-friendly kingdom. And I think because of the mundane influence of some of the cultural influences in Utah and Idaho, it's definitely a very kid-friendly place, so there are always kids around and people aren't, there's a lot of effort to make the SCA more kid-friendly, I think, because everybody has kids.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's one of my things going back that I really want to focus on is supporting families as best I can. So that's wonderful.
This is me and Marguerite and Mistress Sarah. We are in, I don't know, a restaurant of some sort, but it just, the SCA to me is so much about friends and family. And so like almost all of the pictures that I shared with you for this are of me with these people that make the SCA worth existing in for me. You know, it's, I love the learning, and I love the opportunity to have a place to do all of these arts that I really enjoy doing. But ultimately, really, it's about the people for me, and it's about making those friendships. So those people are really important to me. And there's me and Fia and Her Grace Tiana having fun. This is one of my event selfies. Obviously, this is before COVID, but we were doing something. Fia and I definitely sort of, especially for a while, we really went out of our way to do selfies with as many people as we could, because just to build those memories of all of these people that we care about, that we're seeing on, you know, a regular basis, but you don't even necessarily think about them after you've left the, I mean, not that you don't think about them, that sounded terrible, but you kind of, sometimes events turn into a blur because there's so much going on. And so taking those moments to take selfies with people and really kind of have a moment to be present with them.
I think it's really important. I've been asked for pictures of myself at events. There are very, very few, because I don't do this, you know, and this is also something that is going to be happening with us moving forward, so that we have a record of, you know, that we actually were there and present and stuff.
Yeah. That is Her Grace Cortland.
Now, she says she's a germaphobe. I don't know what this picture says about that.
She is absolutely a germaphobe. So I don't know. I was like, well, I guess I belong here now.
There is no stronger sign of possession there than being licked.
I adore Cortland. She is such an inspiration to be within the SCA. You know, she's one of those people that, you know, I've looked up to her artistry in the SCA for so long. And more than a few years ago, I was sort of struggling with my place in the SCA, and sort of why I was here, and whether this was really something that, I mean, this is like 6-7 years ago, whether this was something that I really was happy with the amount of time and energy that I was dedicating to it. And Conrad and Cortland were king and queen at the time, and there had been a pretty big discussion in our Kingdom Facebook page about people not feeling welcome and about people feeling excluded. And Cortland, during court, stood up and talked a lot about how important it is that we, you know, find space for people, and that we are making sure that the SCA is open. And she said a lot of really amazing things. And it was exactly what I needed to hear at that moment. And it really was one of those moments where it reminded me that, yeah, this is where I want to be. And I'm here because I am choosing to be. And this is the group that I want to stay in and make better.
Yeah. She has a gift for creating that and creating community. My sister flew me out to Boise to fight training and to fit Kellen for her knighting outfit. I helped create that, and spending time at Cortland's house with all of your household and all of you, I was kind of rock bottomed out of the SCA. I was pretty much done, and only really doing stuff because it kept me connected to my sister. And that experience turned me around. So yeah, I second that, everything you said.
She's amazing. We love you.
Super cool. All right.
This is Fia and Anne and I at, I'm not even sure, I think that's a coronation, but that was a good day. We're all in Bruce, which is something that like we kind of all worked towards as a household. And I think this might have been the first time that we were all there and in all the proper layers and had everything going on. And so that was a really fun day.
Awesome.
This was a demo, actually. So here in Utah, and there's a spot a little bit farther south than me where they do a Renaissance fair every year. Well, most years, not the last couple of years, but they do a Renaissance fair every year, and the SCA goes down and does a big demo, and we ran a whole arts and sciences tent, and we had a whole tournament. And so that was at that Renaissance festival, and that was a lot of fun. We had a whole like several projects set up, and we had a table where kids could come and color like medieval themed pictures, and we did a make and take, weaving in the round your own little like coin purse. It was so much fun.
Oh wow, I love that idea. That's super cool.
Kaz's Angels. So these are my two apprentice sisters, Ed V, and this was at a crown tournament, and we decided that we needed to pose as Kaz's Angels.
He's a lucky man. Oh, I skipped the picture. Let me go back. There we go.
Oh, this is Bardic Arts. I was performing in the Bard of Artemisia competition. This is up in one of the groups in Montana, and this was Timur and Tiana it was their coronation, and I was telling that story about Tiana, meeting Tiana, and then the second time I saw her at that fighter practice, and she yelled "sucker" at me.
Awesome. I love this person here in all yellow. That's just very beautiful.
That is Mistress Casimira, and she does a lot of she also does a lot of Bardic Arts, and she does a fantastic pre-court show that as people are gathering for court, and all of the king and queen and everybody are doing everything, getting ready to process, and she does this pre-court show where she goes up and she'll talk about because in our kingdom it's tradition that newcomers are invited up and given a token by the king and queen. And so she talks about what to do if you're called up, and she asks people if they want to come tell stories or something new that they tried that day. And so she does this really great, time where she introduces people to kind of court and just keeps people entertained. So
that's super cool.
Yeah. This is, that picture is really small. This is the day that I became an apprentice. So you can just barely see that's me and Fia standing in the shade as I'm becoming her apprentice.
Yeah, and you.
Yep. So Fia it's her tradition that when you become her apprentice, you make a necklace in whatever style you would like, and you give it to her at your apprentice ceremony, and she holds on to it until the day that you are elevated to the laurel, and then she puts a laurel wreath on it, and that's the laurel wreath that's first put on you. And that's actually the laurel wreath that I'm wearing. And so this is the necklace that I made, and it has an additional pearl on it. And that is Fia's story. And so I believe that she told the story of the pearls that when she did her interview. So you will have to go and find her interview and watch it to find out the story of the additional pearl. Oh, this was at Uprising. So in my kingdom we have an event called Uprising, and we used to have the yearly medieval Iron Chef tournament. And this is with this group of ladies, we all entered it together, and this year we won, which was amazing.
Super cool. Do you have are you given a box of ingredients and told to make a meal? And
so we were given ahead of time, we were told what book we would have to be using, so we knew we could use any recipes in this book, but they all had to come from this book. And then on the morning of the competition, we each got a box that had specific ingredients that we had to use. And then in addition to those ingredients, we could use whatever we wanted to bring, but we had to use all of those ingredients.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Those are so much fun.
Those are so much fun. Oh, this is, oh my goodness, we were babies. This was in 2008. And this was also a Timur and Tiana coronation. They decided to do an entire reign in the style of the Tang dynasty. And so they announced this ahead of time and said, anybody who's interested in matching this is we invite you to make clothes that would be appropriate for this time period. And so we all made these outfits that were Tang dynasty style and came and had all of these pictures taken. So yeah, that is baby Thea and Maysun. Oh, and this is baby Thea and Maysun and Prax. So this is actually, I talked earlier about the Laurels Prize tourney. And this is all three of us when we were apprentices, and all three of us are now Laurels. So this is sort of a throwback to when we were all apprentices and displaying in the Laurels Prize tourney. This dress that I'm displaying, this gray one, is actually the first piece that I sewed completely by hand.
Woohoo!
So that was fun. I love sewing by hand. It took me a hot minute to like kind of get excited about hand sewing. Like I used to view it as something that you just kind of had to do to finish your work, and now I love hand sewing. Actually, I love how it looks, and I love the whole process of doing it, and I'll just sit down and put a movie on and kind of zone out and hand sew for hours.
Same. The first thing I hand sewed was a partlet because I was like, I'm not hand sewing shit. It's just not happening. And I was very strongly encouraged to do this thing. And I have no idea where it is, what happened to it. I don't think I ever wore it because I gave up doing Elizabethan before the rest of the outfit was done. But yeah, it was a partlet. It was very little hand sewing, and it took forever, and it was such a slog. And now marathon projects are like my favorite. I love the hand sewing. So I don't know. It's crazy what you fall in love with.
Oh, it is.
That's a great expression.
This is us in a kitchen again. This is not an uncommon place to find us in the kitchen helping out, because we all love to cook, which if you're ever hungry, if you're ever at an event and you're hungry, find Fulci Style. We will feed you. We will have really good food, and we'll have a lot of it. But that's definitely, that was us cooking in the kitchen, probably singing at some point that day.
Very cool.
So there's an event here in Artemisia, in the Shire of Arrows Flight, that it almost always falls right around Easter. It's mystery event, and so they have a different mystery theme every year, and it usually falls right around Easter. And so often they'll do an Easter egg hunt for the kids. And this year, our household volunteered to sponsor the Easter egg hunt because we all had little kids. Like I think that was the year that our kids were like 2 or 3. And so we had in our sort of our friend group that time, we had like 4 or 5 2, 3-year-olds. And so we were like, you know what, we will sponsor this because our kids are going to be like half the egg hunting kids. So this was us preparing for this Easter egg hunt.
And making the fun.
That is another year that we entered the Medieval Iron Chef, and that's Thea and I presenting our recipes and what we had done.
So do you do like full redactions? Do you do kind of a mix of period food and modern food?
So for both Fia and I, if we are running a feast, or obviously for Medieval Iron Chef, they're all directly drawn from historical recipes.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll generally kind of pick a theme, and then everything will be from that time period, just so that we have got sort of a cohesive meal that all goes together. When we do, stuff for our household, we do definitely a mix of some modern and some historical.
I know with kids, it's all modern food in our camp because nothing else will fly.
We have a lot of kids, and we have a lot of kids with some sensory issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we'll probably have, if we're doing anything that the kids might not like, we'll have Kraft mac and cheese, or we'll have chicken nuggets also, because there's no reason to try to force them into that if they're going to hate it.
You got to keep the peace, and you got to make sure that the children want to come back to an event. And having food that they will eat is super, super important. We have a lot of cold pizza at events. That's what they like.
We did that. We started a tradition after we did a couple of years of the Medieval Iron Chef, that we started ordering pizza the day after Medieval Iron Chef. And so we would go pick up like 5 pizzas, and everybody would have pizza. So this is dancing. I love to dance. I love to dance in any form, whether it's modern dance or historical dance. So if I have the opportunity to go out and dance, and I know this one's small, but I'm carrying my teeny tiny son, and we are dancing together.
Oh, I don't know how to make it bigger. Sorry.
That's okay. It's, it's an older picture, and it's probably a cell phone picture, so it just doesn't have a lot of,
pixels.
Yeah. And that's actually at the same event, but I was performing a poem. This time I was performing a translation of a poem by Hafez, which in translation, but about bugs going out and getting drunk in a field.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, I love that one.
Appropriate.
So this is the day that I received my Order of the Key Cross, which is the grant level Arts and Sciences Award in Artemisia. And that is His Grace Sean in the background. He and Nisa gave me that award.
And I can actually recognize him by his leg, which is really weird, but I'm like, oh, that's Sean.
That's Sean. Sean's pretty recognizable.
Oh, that's funny.
This is the oldest picture of me in the SCA that I have, which is why I put it in here, because I feel like it's one of those sort of like, look how far they've come kind of pictures. And this is, this is a simplicity bodice pattern and a short sleeved chemise, and, a pretty basic gathered skirt. And I'm sure it was hot that day, but I'm sure that it was hotter because I doubt that was any kind of natural fiber, because I didn't know better yet.
Oh, awesome. It's very similar to what I wore to my first event, but mine was a plaid tablecloth made out of wool over a silk pirate shirt from a thrift store. So.
Oh, see, good times though. We all started somewhere.
Yep.
This is another picture from that Tang Dynasty coronation. Hi. Oh, there's my daughter.
Hi.
And her new headphones.
Oh, it's the ears. I love the ears.
I know, they're super cute.
So awesome. This is great. And I am looking for the arrow and I can't find it.
Is that it? Are we at the end?
I think we might be at the end. Let's scroll down to make sure. Like, there's no forward arrow. I'm stuck. Okay. So that's that. I'm gonna stop sharing. Sorry, I'm really lame tonight.
No, you're fine.
Okay. So that's really cool. And now you're a laurel.
I'm a laurel.
And you get to figure out what that means to you.
I do. That's like, I feel like it is both like it's a mixed bag, having been elevated virtually, because it's given me a lot of time to really sort of figure that out on my own, because I haven't been to any in-person events since I was elevated. And so I've had a lot of time sort of to like really think about that before I'm, you know, at an event and realizing, oh, people are calling me Laurel.
What does it mean?
What does that mean? What do I do now?
Have you had any virtual Laurels meetings that you've attended yet?
I did. I have been to one virtual Laurel meeting, which was, you know, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I got before I was elevated was being Laurel's a job. Being a Laurel is a job. It is not, it's not just fun. It's not just, you know, it's being up here is a job. And I know a couple people who are fond of saying that it is a trap. They make you think you want it, and then you get there and it's all meetings. And so, you know, I went to my first meeting, and it was really interesting, sort of see that background of how those meetings work, you know, having played for so long and wondering what it was like, and then going to that meeting and seeing what it was like. And I learned that a lot of people are a lot goofier and sillier than I realized, because you get in that meeting and they're like, ugh, and you're like, wait a second, I thought this was serious.
Did you, was it more or less organized than you thought it would be?
I think it was more organized than I thought it would be. And we talked about a lot more topics than I think I realized came up in Laurel meetings.
Very cool. Yeah, so I've been in Laurel 16, 17, I don't know, a while. And I thought it was going to be super organized and and it was not. And I was like, oh, I have these expectations that are way up here. And then as I kind of walked through my first couple of years as a Laurel, I'm like, oh, my way up here expectations are so unrealistic. There's no way I can fill those shoes that I'm expecting all of these people to fill. And wow, I've been a total asshole. And so I hope that your first few years are smoother and more comfortable.
Thank you.
Because mine were a lot of soul searching, and it took me, I think, 9 years to feel like I really belonged in the group. So, but you know, that circles back around to that whole imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I definitely was having a moment, and I messaged Mia because she's my best friend, and I was like, what am I doing this interview? I don't know anything. I'm a baby. I know nothing.
And, you know, I've interviewed somebody that's been on vigil this whole time and didn't want to do a virtual elevation, and is still on vigil. And I think that all of these experiences are important, and all of them are totally valid. And I think it's more important right now to hear from new voices. You know, we get stuck in our ways. We tend to see things through the same lens over and over and over again. And one of the most important parts of stewardship is opening that door for the next generation of people to come in and help us grow in the directions that we need to grow, and change. And even if it's hard, that has to happen. You know, we have to grow as a society and in each of the individual peerages. So I have a lot of hopes for when we get back in person, and I'm prepared to roll up my sleeves and do some work. And also, more importantly, do a lot of listening and see where we need to be heading. Do you have, and not necessarily within the peerage, but what are your sort of goals moving forward, and what are the things that you want to see and work towards?
I think one of the big shifts that watching people as they're elevated, and as we, because we work so hard to get to that point, and there's a lot of self-advocating. I mean, I don't not that you're trying to be like, oh, look at me, I'm so cool, meh, meh, but that there's a lot more putting yourself out there and working really hard to be able to put yourself out there and to be visible. And I think that one of the hardest things that people go through as they transition from that mindset into being a peer is making it not about you anymore. And I think that's something that I really want to work towards going forward, is remembering that it's not about putting myself out there. It's about using that place that I've been given to bring other people into the light and make sure that people who are maybe being overlooked, who are being viewed as, more aggressive or more this or more that because of their position in society, making sure that they're seen for who they are, and making sure to bring them forward.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. I think that I view the most important thing that I do as a peer is to lift other people up and to look at where they are, meet them where they are, and figure out how to foster them to get to the next level and to, do the thing. And if the way that they are and the people that they are isn't compatible with the way that we expect people to do the thing, take a look at maybe what changes need to happen in the way that we do the thing, to make sure that those people are included. One of the things that a couple of the laurels in our kingdom are doing is starting to look at indigenous peoples doing researching their own history and representing themselves and their cultures within the SCA. And we don't have a huge venue for that, and we don't have a matrix or a way of looking at what that kind of research looks like. And I'm really, really excited about starting to enable that kind of research and encouraging it, and seeing where we go with that. I'm really hoping that that happens in a big, big way. So that's mine.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I really want to see where that goes as well. That's really exciting to see, like, that whole additional perspective on the SCA becoming more visible.
Yeah. And I have nothing to do with it because that's not my culture, but I can definitely facilitate and help people represent themselves and see themselves in our group.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the recurring themes that we get over and over in these interviews, in the Laurel interviews and the Ducal interviews that my sister did, and the sisters interviews we do together, and Grace Under Pressure, is all about finding your people and finding your group and feeling at home. And that's what stewardship means to me, is making sure that other people can find their home here too. So yeah, I went off on a tangent.
No, that's such a good tangent though. And I think, so often when we talk to people about what brought you into the SCA and what keeps you, so many people say what keeps them here is the community. It's their found family. It's that they came here and they found that place where they really belong and where they were accepted and embraced for who they are. And expanding who can come in and feel that is always a noble goal for us to have.
Yeah, for sure. We are at about an hour and a half.
Okay.
Which is really good. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about tonight that we haven't covered yet? Or is there something that we covered but you'd like to talk about more?
Not sure. I think we've talked about equity and inclusivity, and we've talked about it a lot in regards to race, which is a really important one, because you can't, when you walk through an event, people see what race you are. There's no hiding that. But I think it's also really important, as a lot of times these conversations can really sort of revolve around race a lot. And I think it's also really important to address a lot of the other aspects of inclusivity that particularly those things that might be less visible as somebody walks through, you know, some invisible disabilities or people who are LGBTQ plus. And that's, you know, it's something that I try to be very vocal about because I am also a queer bisexual woman. And so I try to, yay! I try to be very open about that because I am lucky enough to be in a place where I have the privilege that I can be very out and very vocal and very visible about that because, you know, my family and my work and my spouse and my household are all very supportive of that. And so I try to be very visible about that because not everybody has that. Yeah. And I hope that by being more visible about that, by doing things like I use non-gendered titles, and that's why I use Laurel as opposed to mistress or magistra. And when before I was elevated, I used noble. And so making some of those things visible as somebody who has the privilege to be very safe in doing that, I hope that helps to make it so that we reach a place where everybody can sooner. And so I think it's one of those things that sometimes, particularly when race is involved, it's really difficult to see where we have other privileges, but they're there. Like there's always a privilege that somebody has that maybe even if it's hard to see, and using those things to make things better for other people is really, really important, so that we can, you know, spread that love so that hopefully everybody has that place where they can be themselves and be authentic, and be safe.
Yeah. And for me, gender inclusivity and all of the equity and inclusivity issues are basic foundational things that the SDA has been falling behind on and that we need to catch up with. It's not some special thing that we're going to use to attract people to us. Mm-hmm. It needs to be just the base of operations. You know, that's just getting us where we should be, you know. And then the other stuff, like, you know, attracting gamers and getting younger kids in and all of that comes into play. But until we have a stronger base of inclusivity and equity, none of the rest is going to be successful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. At least that's the way I see it.
I agree. And I think, you know, it is useless to try to recruit specifically to a group of people if we're not already creating a space that is safe and open to them. You know, if we don't already have those things in place, people aren't going to want to join a new hobby where they have to fight just to be recognized as who they are. We have to have those things in place and then be like, hey, wouldn't this be fun?
Yeah. We can't say like, come on in, now do some work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to work at all. Anyway. Okay, well, thank you so much for spending your evening, and thanks to your daughter for her visits.
Thank you so much for having me and for letting me talk about all these things that are important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what we're here for. Tomorrow night, my sister and I are continuing our quest to interview the Lions of Ontier, and we are interviewing Duke Torquil, who has been playing for a very long time and has reigned as King and of Ontier and Prince of the Summit several times. So that'll be lots of fun. And then this weekend, on Saturday at 6 p.m. Pacific time, we are interviewing Tanis B from Australia, from Lockock. And she's awesome. So that's going to be lots of fun. And more stuff next week that is all posted on our schedule. So check out the sisters page and see what there is to watch. Maysun, thank you again for your time and
Thank you.
for sharing your story. I really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for watching. And we will see you all soon.
Bye-bye.
Good night.